The galaxy was full of stars, planets, and life, but there was also fear, and one name that brought that fear to every corner of space was Commander Virex, the most powerful and most feared warrior in the Tharnax Empire. She was known across every system, every world, every station. Her name was whispered in fear and silence, in secret meetings, and even in dreams. Children were told stories of her not as a hero, but as a warning, a shadow that flew across the stars in a giant black ship with red lights that glowed like blood. Her armor was black, her voice cold, her heart closed like steel. She never lost a battle, never showed mercy, never felt pain. Her eyes were like ice. Her hands held the power to destroy cities with one command. She was not just a leader, she was the storm, the fire, and the ender. Rise was not slow. She appeared suddenly during the war against the Solari, a race of light and peace. They thought they could talk to her, they thought she could be reasoned with, but when she arrived, she did not speak. She attacked, and in 7 hours the Solari homeworld was gone, turned to dust. Her army followed her like machines. No fear, no rest, no weakness. She trained them, she built them, she led them through destruction after destruction. Soon the Tharnax Empire grew larger, faster, stronger. Other races joined out of fear, not choice. They gave up their freedom just to survive her path. They called her the Queen of Steel, the Dark Flame, the Shadow General, but to the humans, she was a ghost, a name in news stories, a face on broken screens, a warning in every military room. Earth was still safe, or at least that is what humans believed. They thought the Tharnax would stop after reaching the edge of Sector 7, but they did not, and soon they were moving again. Now Earth was in their path, and Commander Virex was leading them. Earth sent messages, offers of peace, offers of trade, offers of surrender, but Virex never answered. She never even looked at the messages too. Her Earth was not special, it was just another piece to burn, another step forward, another mission. Her ship, the Bloodwing, was already near Mars, hiding in the shadows, waiting for the final order. But this time something was different, and no one knew why, not even Virex herself. The Council on Earth met everyday leaders, scientists, soldiers. They tried to find a plan, a way to stop her. Some said use nukes. Others said build shields, others said run, but none of it would work, not against her. Not against the one who had ended over 50 civilizations. They had one chance, one last hope, a peace team, a group of people who would go and try to delay her, maybe speak to her, maybe understand her just enough to stop the attack for one day. For 1 hour among this team was a man named Elias. He was not a soldier, not a leader, not a scientist. He was just a peace worker, someone who helped people, someone who believed in calm and kindness and talking. He had never been in war, never used a gun, never even seen space, but he believed something others did not. He believed Virex had a heart somewhere deep inside, and he believed he could find it. People laughed at him. They said he was stupid, soft, weak. They said he would be the first to die. They said he was a waste of time, but he did not listen. He got on the ship with the others and left Earth, knowing he might never return, knowing he might face the galaxy's most dangerous being with only words and hope in his hands. Commander Virex stood at the window of her warship, watching the stars, watching the dark, cold space as her fingers moved across the screen, full of maps, full of targets, full of death. Her mind was sharp, her heart silent. She had no memory of her home, no memory of warmth, no memory of love. She had trained since she was a child, trained to kill, trained to win, trained to obey. She knew only war, only orders, only silence. But when she heard a message from the approaching human ship, something strange happened. It was just a voice, just a man speaking in simple human language, talking about peace, talking about emotion, talking about life and dreams and stories and music. Something small shifted inside her just for a second. Her eyes blinked slower, her breath paused, her hand froze just 1 second, nothing more. Her second in command noticed and asked if something was wrong. She said, no, nothing is wrong, but something was not right either. It was not fear, not pain, not doubt, but something old, something buried, something human, and it scared her more than any weapon ever had. And so the ship from Earth came closer, and the countdown The invasion kept ticking, and the galaxy waited to see if Commander Virex would burn another world or if something different would happen, something no one expected, something even she could not understand. Elias stood near the window of the small transport ship, staring out into the dark sea of stars. Ahead of him, he had never been this far from Earth, never seen so much emptiness and silence, but now he was flying straight into the heart of danger, into the shadow of Commander Virex, the one name that haunted every news, broadcast every dream, every military whisper. She was not just a soldier, not just a leader. She was the storm that followed silence, the flame that left only ashes. The peace team with him was small, only 5 people, each with different skills. One was a language expert, one a cultural historian, one a diplomat, one a medical officer, and then there was Elias, just a peace worker with soft hands and kind eyes, who believed not in weapons but in words, not in power but in presence. Mission was clear: slow the invasion, give Earth more time, delay the destruction just for one more day. They had no weapons, no shields, no army, just a message of peace and a hope that someone behind all that armor might still be able to feel something real. As they neared the Tharnax border, their ship was intercepted, surrounded by 3 black ships shaped like knives, flying without sound, without lights, and without any mercy. The human crew waited as the aliens scanned them. Silence filled the air, tension heavy like stone, but then a single message came through from the flagship itself, from Commander Virex. Bring the one called Elias alone to the chamber. The others were shocked, afraid, confused, but Elias only nodded. He stepped forward, no armor, no fear, and walked into the transport pod that would take him to the Bloodwing, the warship of nightmares, the one that had burned entire moons into nothing. He entered the cold halls of the ship, escorted by 2 tall Tharnax guards with silver skin and glowing eyes. The walls were made of metal with veins of red pulsing like blood. The lights dimmed the air, thick with silence. The only sound was his own breath as he was led to the central chamber. She stood tall, armored, powerful, a figure made from war and fire. Commander Virex. Eyes like ice, hair black like space, voice cold enough to freeze bones. She did not speak for a long time. She only looked at him, studying him, trying to see what made this small human important. Why, she felt something when he spoke over the transmission days ago. "Why are you here?" she asked finally, her voice sharp like a blade. Elias looked up at her. No fear, no anger, only truth. He said, "I am here to understand you, not to fight, not to beg, but to speak." She laughed, a sound like thunder, dry and cruel. "Understanding is weakness in war, and I am not weak. But what if war is the weakness?" he said. "What if peace is the real power?" She moved closer, towering over him, but he did not step back. He met her eyes like no one had ever dared before. She raised her hand as if to strike him, but stopped. Her hand shook, just a fian. "Little, why do you not fear me?" she asked again. "Because I do not see a monster," he said. "I see someone tired, someone who has carried pain so long she forgot how to feel." Her eyes narrowed, her breath slow, her voice lower. "Who told you that?" "No one," he said. "I just feel it." And with that something invisible cracked something small deep inside the warrior of steel, a memory, a feeling, a sound long forgotten. A name, maybe her name, before she became Virex, before she became the tool of an empire. She turned away from him for a second, just 1 second, but that second was noticed by the watchers, the guards, the ship, the empire. Her second in command watched from the shadows, his eyes sharp. He sent a silent message to the high command. "The commander is compromised back on Earth." Leaders watched the signal from Elias's transport. It had reached the warship. It had not been destroyed, not yet. That gave them hope and fear both at once. The military wanted to launch missiles, but the diplomats said, "Wait, give him time. Give him a chance." Elias stayed standing, still watching her. Not judging, not pushing, just waiting. He pulled out a small object from his pocket, a simple thing, a picture of Earth from space, glowing blue and white. He held it up and said, "This is home. This is what we fight for, not to destroy, but to protect, not to burn, but to grow." She stared at it, her eyes unmoving, her breath silent, her heart loud and confused. "I was born for war," she said. "I do not know anything else." "Then learn," he said. "You are not Just what they made you to be. You can choose." And those words echoed in her mind louder than any battle, louder than any order. Choose. He was not strong, not powerful, not rich, but his words hit harder than any weapon ever had they reached into the place where no one had ever gone before they touched the piece of her that still remembered what it meant to feel, to dream, to be more than a femme, more than a femme. Shadow, and for the first time in many years, Commander Virex did not know what to say. Ilias sat on the edge of the smooth metal bench inside a cold, quiet room, the walls around him curved like a dark shell. The lights above soft and red like fading embers. The air felt heavy with silence, but it was not the silence of peace, it was the silence of waiting, watching, thinking. He had not been harmed, not tied, not even questioned since his arrival. Instead, he had been left alone inside the chamber deep within the warship, where only one person had the key, the one they all feared. The one he had come to meet. Commander Virex entered the room with footsteps that echoed like thunder. Her armor clicked and pulsed with faint red light. Her long, black cape moved like smoke behind her, and her face, though calm, carried the weight of 1,000 battles. She stood still for a moment just inside the doorway, her eyes fixed on Elias, not with anger or hate, but with confusion. "You should be afraid," she said, her voice like ice on metal. Elias looked up slowly, his voice soft. "I know then." "Why are you not?" she asked again, her tone sharp but not cruel. "Because fear has never changed anything," he answered. "Because I came to speak, not to run." She moved closer, one step then another. The air around her seemed to hum as if the ship itself breathed. With her, the guards outside the door stood still, their hands near, their weapons ready for anything. "I have destroyed worlds," she said, her voice low. "I have turned oceans into fire. I have silenced kings with one order. Do you think your words matter?" "To me do," Elias replied, "not because my words are strong, but because maybe you are tired of only hearing fear." The room felt smaller as she stepped even closer, her shadow falling over him, but Elias did not flinch. He met her gaze, and in that long look something invisible passed between them, not a weapon, not a threat, but something even more dangerous. "Understanding?" she asked. "Why did they send you? Why not a general or a leader? Why send someone with no army? Because armies only bring more war." He said, "I was sent because they hoped for something different, something that cannot be forced or commanded." She turned away, her eyes narrowing as she looked at the far wall, a screen showing Earth slowly rotating, in the distance a small blue light. "In the dark your planet looks weak," she said, small, soft, full of things that can be broken. "Yes," Elias said, "and yet it keeps living, it keeps hoping. That is why I came, not to fight you, but to remind you that there is another way." "For a long time," she said. Nothing. Her fingers touched the screen, tracing the shape of Earth. She seemed lost in thought, in memory, in something old that refused to die. "Do you know what they made me?" she asked, without turning. "A weapon, not a person, a tool with no choice. They erased my past, my name, my voice. They filled me with steel and silence and sent me into the stars to crush anyone who stood in their way." "And did it work?" Elias asked. "Did they erase all of you?" She turned to him slowly, her face unreadable, and said, "No, not all of me. Something remained, a spark, maybe a ghost, maybe something weaker than they wanted." "That is not weakness," he said gently. "That is what makes you strong, not the armor, not the fire, but the part of you they could not break." She stepped back and sat across from him, the movement slow, as if uncertain, as if, for the first time, unsure of what she was supposed to be. "You are strange for a human," she said. "You speak to me like I am not a monster, because I do not believe in monsters." Elias said, "I believe in people who have been hurt and shaped by pain, but still carry light inside, even if they forget it is there." She looked at him, her eyes less cold, now more like stone, warmed by the sun, not melting, not breaking, just changing. "They will not accept peace," she said. "The Empire will not allow it." "Then change the Empire," he said, "or leave it behind. You are not their prisoner. You are more than what they built." Her hands tightened around the edge of her seat, her voice quiet and unsure. "I do not know how." "Then let me show you," he said. "Let us walk a new path together, not as enemies, not as weapons, but as people who want something better outside." The room alarms began to sound faint, and distant red lights flashed along the corridors. Her Second in command had sent another message to the High Command. The commander is compromised, prepare for override, but inside the chamber none of that mattered, for in that small quiet space between two hearts something new had begun, something that no fleet or order could stop, and for the first time in a long time Commander Virex listened, not as a conqueror, not as a machine, but as someone who remembered what it felt like to be more than fear. Commander Virex stood in the command hall staring at the war maps glowing across the walls, each planet marked, each route calculated, each invasion set in motion, and yet her mind was not on the mission. Her thoughts wandered like shadows slipping through cracks in steel walls. Her second in command, Officer Krail, watched her from a distance, his eyes sharp, his hands folded behind his back. He had followed her for years, through fire, through blood, through silence. He had seen her destroy enemies without blinking and command fleets without hesitation. But now something was different, something small, something dangerous. She missed the last briefing again. Krail whispered to the tactical officer. She was alone in the observatory for hours. Strange. The officer said, "Is she unwell?" "No," Krail replied, "just distracted." Inside her private chamber, Virex stood alone, staring at a small object resting on her desk. It was the image Elias had given her. Earth from space, blue and white, soft and calm, so different from the cold black metal around her. She had held it in her hand many times now, each time wondering why it made her feel something she could not name. She remembered his words, not sharp, not loud, but deep. They stayed in her like seeds under frozen ground. "You are more than what they built you can choose." She had not chosen anything in years. Every step, every mission, every order had been given to her. She followed them without question, without pause. But now her hands trembled sometimes, her eyes closed when she looked at stars, and she felt something pressing against her chest like a memory trying to break free. She had not told anyone, not even Krail, who had always stood at her side, who had always obeyed without question, but he was watching her more. Now his eyes narrow, his voice lower. Something in him did not trust the silence growing inside her. Entered the training chamber that morning where soldiers sparred and weapons sang through the air. She walked past them and they stopped, standing straight, their faces full of fear and pride, waiting for command, but she gave none. She simply watched for a while. Her arms crossed her mind. Far away, one soldier made a mistake, dropped his weapon and flinched, expecting punishment. But Virex only turned away and walked out the room. No word, no anger, only silence. That night she stood in the observatory again, the stars shining outside, endless and quiet. Elias entered slowly. The guards let him pass without resistance. They had grown used to his presence, though none understood why he was still alive. "You are changing," he said softly, his voice calm. "I do not know what I am becoming," she replied, her voice low. "Something better," he said. Someone really was real. Before she said, sharp for a moment, "Yes, but not free," he answered. She looked at him, eyes full of storms and fire, and yet under it all something warm, something alive. "Why do you keep coming back?" she asked. "Because you are still listening," he said, "and that means there is still hope." Hope, she whispered like the word was a question, not a belief. Officer Krail watched from the shadows again, his face cold, his mind already moving. He sent another message to the High Command. "She is compromised. The human is influencing her orders." The reply came quickly, "Prepare for full override. If she resists, remove her." He knew what that meant, and so did the elite guard waiting in the lower decks, their weapons ready, their loyalty not to her, but to the Empire back. In the observatory, Elias stepped closer to Virex and held out something new, a small device playing music from Earth, soft, slow piano notes drifting into the air. "What is this?" she asked. "A song," he said, "something that speaks without words." She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the sound wash over her. It touched places inside her that had no name, no memory, only feeling. "I do not understand why this matters," she said. "Because it reminds you that you are alive," he answered. She turned to him, her hand reaching out, not for a weapon, not for control, but for the music. At that moment the door burst open. Krail entered with guards behind him, faces stern, weapons drawn. "Commander, step away from the human," he ordered. Eyes narrowed, voice like steel. What are you doing protecting the mission? He said. You are no longer able to. Lichi stepped in front of Elias, her stance firm, her voice rising. I gave no order for this. You are the threat now, he said. You have forgotten who you are. She looked at Elias, then back at Krail, and for the first time in her life she chose something. Not by command, not by fear, but by heart. Then I choose to remember, she said, and raised her arm, calling her armor to full power. Krail stepped back, confused. The guards hesitated, the moment breaking like glass under weight. Elias stood behind her, unsure, afraid but trusting, and in that moment, the war had not ended, the Empire had not fallen, but something far more powerful had begun. Commander Virex, the most feared warrior in the galaxy, had taken her first step towards something no machine, no empire, no army could stop. Freedom ****. The room was quiet again after the guards left. After Krail was forced to retreat after Virex made her stand, she had ordered the others out with a voice stronger than iron, colder than space, but Elias knew something inside her was shaking. Even if she did not show it, she stood with her back to him, eyes staring at the stars, her breath slow and uneven, her hands curled into fists. She had never disobeyed an order, never questioned the Empire, never hesitated until now. He stepped closer, not speaking, not rushing, only letting her feel that she was not alone in the silence. You do not understand, she said without turning, her voice low. I am not supposed to feel anything. I was made to destroy, not to choose, not to care. Then why did you save me? He asked quietly. Because I did not want to see you hurt, she said, her voice cracking like old metal. That is feeling, Elias said softly. That is being human. Am not human, she snapped, turning to face him, her eyes glowing with fire. I am Tharnax. I am forged by war. I am bound by law and duty and strength. But your heart does not follow those laws, he said, and neither do your eyes. She looked away again, her voice lower this time. I cannot stop the war. The Empire will not allow it. Even now, they prepare the final strike. They will burn Earth. They will silence everything that reminds me of who I used to be. Do you want that? Elias asked. No, she said almost in a whisper. Then fight, Elias said, not with weapons, but with choice. Virex stepped forward. Slowly, her armor still glowing faint red, her expression unreadable, and then she asked a question so soft it almost disappeared. What? If I fail, then you fail with honor, Elias said, but you do not fail alone. The ship shook slightly under their feet. As if answering the tension around them, alarms flickered once and then fell silent. The countdown had begun, and the Empire was no longer waiting. They are going to attack soon, Virex said, her voice full of dread. The main cannon is already charging. When the cycle ends, Earth will be gone in seconds. Can you stop it? Elias asked. She shook her head slowly. If I shut down the ship from here, the override system will trigger a total lockdown. They will assume betrayal. They will kill everyone on board. To protect the weapon, then we must find another way, Elias said, and looked into her eyes. The same way he had done that first day, without fear, without lies, the same way no one ever looked at her before. There may be one chance, she said, a failsafe buried deep in the core, a command line only I can access, but if I use it, I will lose control of the ship and the Empire will hunt me like a traitor. Then we run, Elias said. She stared at him, the idea like a flame catching dry paper. Run, she repeated as if it was a foreign word. Yes, Elias said. We leave this behind, you and me. We find a place where war cannot reach us, where stars mean hope, not targets. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the image build in her mind. Stars without orders, skies without maps, voices without commands. You would leave your planet for me, she asked. If it means saving it, I would, Elias said, and if it means giving you freedom, then yes, every team. A strange warmth filled her chest, something heavy, something alive. Her hand moved to her heart, not from pain, but from something deeper. For the first time since her creation, she felt like she was not just a tool, not just a weapon, but something real. She opened her eyes and nodded. Take me to the failsafe. I will end this. They moved quickly through the ship, the halls quiet, the lights darker than usual, the system already preparing for the final strike, countdown echoing through the corridor. Krail watched them from the upper deck, his face hard, his hands shaking slightly. The override was already set, the order clear. If she disobeys, she is no longer commander, she is target. They reached the core chamber, a room full of light and sound, the heart of the ship. Pulsing like a giant engine of death, Virex placed her hand on the command panel, her voice steady. This is my last command as a soldier of the Empire. Cancel the firing cycle, release the override, activate the shut down. The system hesitated as if confused, then responded slowly. Core access granted, firing cycle paused, lockdown initiated. The red lights turned blue. The ship began to hum a different tune, one of stillness, one of quiet. But the price came fast. The speakers above roared with the voice of high command. Commander Virex, you are removed from service. You are marked for termination. All forces are ordered to eliminate the target. She turned to Elias, her eyes calm. They are coming. Then we go now, Elias said. She took his hand and held it, not like a warrior, not like a machine, but like someone who had just woken up from a long dark dream, and together they ran into the unknown, chased by an empire bound by nothing but hope. The halls of the Bloodwing echoed with silent alarms as Virex and Elias ran side by side, their footsteps quick, their hearts louder than any siren. The lights had turned from red to gold, a warning not of attack but of rebellion. The ship no longer answered only to her, it now answered to the Empire, and the Empire had given one command. Remove her. Elias gripped her arm as they moved through the twisting corridors, past empty barracks and sealed blast doors. The soldiers were gone, moved to higher decks, awaiting orders, but none of them would dare act until confirmation from the override system, and Virex knew that. Window was closing. She stopped at a locked terminal near the lower docking bay. Her fingers moved across the control pad, calling up old codes. Ones she had never used, ones meant for escape pods and sealed launch tubes. There is a hidden route, she said to Elias, a maintenance shaft that leads to the outer ring. If we reach it, we can escape before they realize we are gone. And after that, Elias asked, breathing fast, after that we disappear, she said quietly. They moved again, fast and focused, but behind them something followed, quiet as wind, sharp as steel. Krail had not waited for approval. He had made his choice. He had trained beside Virex, stood by her for years, through silence, through war, through fire, and now she had turned her back on all of it. For what? For a single human, for a feeling. He felt anger burn in his chest as he followed her steps through hidden paths. His armor silent, his eyes cold. He had been loyal, but loyalty meant nothing if the mission died with her. Virex and Elias reached the lower shaft door, and she pressed her hand to the panel. The locks opened. Slow, heavy, loud, like the breath of a sleeping beast. The door split, and a tunnel stretched before them. Dark, narrow, and full of shadows. Once we cross this, Virex said, we are outside command range. What happens then? Elias asked. Then we are free, she said. They stepped inside the shaft and began to move through it, their voices low, their hearts pounding. You do not have to come with me, she said softly. But I want to, Elias replied. Why? Because I believe in what you can become. They reached the halfway point when a sudden sound behind them made them freeze, a soft click, then a voice going somewhere. Commander Virex turned, her eyes narrowing, her heart sinking. Krail stepped out from the dark, weapon-raised face without emotion. You were like a sister to me, he said, and now you betray everything we stood for. I found something more, she replied, something real. You found weakness, he said. You let it blind you. You let it infect you. No, she said. I let it wake mesh. Moved to shield Elias, her body ready, her stance firm. Do not make me do this. Krail, she said. You already made that choice for both of us, he said. His finger moved to the trigger, and time slowed. Virex launched forward faster than thought, her arm knocking the weapon aside. The shot hit the wall with a burst of heat. Krail stepped back and swung a blade from his side, striking toward Elias, but Virex blocked it with her own arm, the blade cutting through part of her armor but not her will. You are better than this, she said, her voice pained. No, I am what the Empire made me, he shouted and swung again. They fought in the narrow space, blade against fist, strength against memory, years of trust breaking with every Elias watched, unable to move, caught between fear and shock. Virex finally knocked Krell's weapon aside and held him by the collar, her voice shaking. "Please stop, we do not have to end this here." But he only looked at her with tears and rage and said, "Yes, we do." She let go of him and turned back to Elias. "Run," she said. Now they moved fast through the final part of the shaft as Krell pulled himself up behind them, bleeding but still a la Virex. And Elias reached the end door, a small emergency pod waiting on the other side. She opened it and pushed Elias in, but before she could follow, a sharp pain shot through her side. Krell had thrown his last blade. It struck just below her ribs. She gasped, but kept her balance and climbed into the pod. With Elias, she hit the launch and the pod shot into space. Krell stood at the shaft mouth, watching them go, his hand over his wound, his eyes full of loss. Inside the pod, Elias held Virex as she leaned back, breathing hard. "Why did you not leave me?" he asked. "Because I promised to choose," she whispered, "and I choose you." Stars outside the pod stretched like ribbons as they left the ship behind, heading into the unknown, chased by fire, hunted by silence, but holding something stronger than warhope. The escape pod drifted through open space, silent and unseen, as the warship behind them faded into a sea of stars. Elias held Virex closed, his hands pressed gently against the wound on her side, her armor cracked and stained with traces of light that pulsed weakly like a dying heartbeat. He looked into her face and saw something he had never seen before in any warrior or leader, not fear, not pain, but peace. She breathed slowly, eyes have closed, her body trembling, but her voice steady as she whispered to him, "The stars are different out here. I used to think they were cold, now they feel like fire." He nodded, his voice shaking. "But sure, you are free now, no more commands, no more orders. Just you and the stars." She looked at him and smiled, a foul, small, quiet smile that spoke more than 1,000 battles. Ever could. Her fingers touched his wrist and her voice softened. "Thank you for reminding me who I was." The pod's small screen blinked as it picked up distant signals. Earth was still out there. The final countdown had stopped when she used the failsafe. The main cannon never fired, and the planet still turned slowly in the black of space, unaware of how close it had come to becoming dust. But the Empire knew what had happened. The override records had already been reviewed. Virex had been marked as a traitor, a defector, a danger to the cause, and now fleets were being mobilized not to invade Earth, but to capture or destroy the one who dared to say no. She knew they would not stop, and Elias knew it too. They landed on a small moon near a neutral system, quiet and covered in silver sand with old ruins from a time long forgotten. The pod had only enough power to make one jump, and now they were alone, but together, alive, but hunted. Virex spent the first night sitting near the edge of a cliff, looking at the broken stars above, her armor removed for the first time in years, her face bare to the night wind, her mind full of things she had never allowed herself to feel. Elias sat beside her, quiet at first, unsure what to say. Then he spoke in a soft voice, not to fix her, not to guide her, just to be near her. "I never thought I would survive meeting you," he said, "and I never thought you would be the one to save." Mesh looked at him, her voice low and warm. "I never thought I would care if someone lived or died, and yet here you are, and I am glad you are." They spent days on the moon, building shelter, gathering supplies, listening to signals, and learning about what came next. The Empire was angry. Commanders barked through open channels, demanding her return, sending bounty orders and deploying ships across nearby sectors, but they did not know where she had gone. They did not know she had chosen to disappear, but she knew she could not hide forever, not if she wanted to finish what she had started. One morning, as the wind moved slowly across the sand, she stood tall again, her armor repaired, her eyes calm and clear. She turned to Elias and said, "I need to speak, not with my hands, not with weapons, but with truth." Elias understood what she meant. They sent a signal, a wide broadcast across neutral space, short and simple. Just a voice, no threat, no demand, only her voice. "This is Commander Virex, former general of the Tharnax Empire. I speak now not for war, but for those who have felt its weight. I speak to those who have followed orders without question, who have forgotten their names. Their dreams, their voices I speak, because I found something stronger than conquest. I found choice. I found truth in the eyes of someone I was meant to destroy, and I surrendered not to weakness but to something more powerful than fear. I surrendered to what makes us alive. The message rippled through systems like wind across glass. Some laughed, some called it betrayal, some called it madness, but some listened. Week later, a ship arrived not from the Empire, but from a small rebel group who had long resisted the control of Tharnax. Their leader asked one thing before opening their doors: why should we trust someone who helped burn half the stars? And Varex answered simply, because I am the only one who can teach you how to stop them. She stepped aboard that ship with Elias at her side, not as a warrior, not as a weapon, but as a voice. From that moment she became something else. She no longer wore the title of commander. She no longer followed the path given to her by others. She traveled across hidden paths and secret outposts, speaking to those who had once feared her, showing them that strength without soul is nothing, that victory without meaning is hollow. Some said she was a traitor. Others said she was a legend, but those who met her, those who looked into her eyes and saw the quiet fire within, knew she had become a symbol of something new. One day, years later, a young soldier asked her, "What made you change? What made you turn against everything?" She looked out at the stars and smiled again, that same small smile, and said, "A human asked me if I was tired, and I realized I had never been allowed to ask myself that question, and when I finally did, I found the answer." Elias stood nearby smiling as he watched her speak, not as a warrior, not as a savior, but as someone who had been lost and chose to be found. She had been the fire that burned empires, the sword that carved silence into history, but now she was the light that showed others how to escape the dark. She surrendered everything, the power, the command, the fear, and in return she received something she never thought she would ever find: a name that was hers alone, a life she had chosen, and a future she could finally call her own. Asterisk, asterisk.